So just last week, I attended the Pikes Peak Writers Conference here in Colorado. So one thing I sometimes get asked, particularly from new writers, is if writers' conferences are worth the investment. Writers' conferences can be quite expensive. In general, they are usually running at least $350 to $400 all the way up to, just for the conference itself, over $1,000, depending on if it's a national conference or it's a regional conference. So I think it's definitely something to sort of consider, especially depending on where you are in your career, if this is going to be a reasonable investment in your career and your future as a writer. So let's talk about writers' conferences. So first off, are writers' conferences worth the cost? Like I said, they can start in the mid 300s and go all the way up to over $1,000. And that doesn't include your travel expenses. You're gonna have airfare if it's not somewhere close enough for you to drive. You're gonna have hotel costs. Sometimes there's extra charges for you to attend things like awards banquets and things like that. So let's talk about cost. So whether or not it's gonna be worth it to you is going to depend on a couple variables. Obviously, the first of those is going to be your personal funds. Writers certainly run the gamut from, they don't have two nickels to rub together to they have a lot of disposable income, whether that is from their writing career or from another career they have, or just maybe they're later in their life and retirement now, and writing is something that they have come to. I think regardless of whatever money you have to spend, you always need to be considering, like, what would be my return on this investment? And so I think for me, when I think about whether or not I'm going to shell out money, whether it's for a conference or some other opportunity, I'm trying to consider, is this going to provide me a good return on my investment, whether that investment is money or time. So a couple things to consider with that. First of all, I would say, where are you in your career? Are you a very, very new writer? And when I say very, very new writer, like you've not written a word or hardly even a chapter at this point. Under those circumstances, I guess I would say, is a writers' conference really going to be the best use of your time at this stage of the game? As a kind of a side note, the Pikes Peak Writers Conference, I ran into a gentleman, and we were chatting. He was asking me some questions, and throughout that conversation, it sort of came out that he hadn't written anything yet. Like, he was curious about writing, and was thinking maybe he might want to write, but up until this point, he hadn't actually written anything. Not a short story, not a poem, not a chapter of a book. And obviously it's like his money, he can spend it however he likes, and certainly conferences will take your money, absolutely. But I just sort of wonder, I think if you're going to get something out of a learning experience, it's probably helpful if you're bringing something to the table with regards to your own skill set. And, I just think that there was probably a lot of opportunities he maybe hadn't yet taken advantage of. One would be his own just kind of, experience with the written word and trying to figure out, what would his writing even look like if he had attempted it yet. And additionally, there's just a ton of really great and free information online. And so I guess one thing I would say is, if you have plenty of disposable income, who cares? Go network, meet other authors, meet agents, meet editors, even if you don't have anything to share, I suppose, and just kind of soak it in. Think of it, if it's like a vacation or experience for you, that's one thing. But if that's not the case, I would maybe hold off on investing in a writers' conference if I hadn't yet explored what my own writing even looked like yet up to this. Conversely, I guess I would say, if you're a very seasoned author and you have written multiple books, you've been at this for quite some time, you already have a fairly thriving writing career, I guess I would ask, what are you hoping to get out of that writers' conference? That is, unless you are teaching a class and you're just trying to sort of give back to your community, and that's absolutely amazing, and I encourage that. Or you are invited to sort of be one of their speakers. Writers' conferences often will have like keynote speakers and other speakers that they schedule throughout the conference. And so, if you are pretty highly skilled when it comes to craft and marketing, and these sorts of things, if you're already well connected within the publishing community, whether that is with a traditional publisher or your self-publishing, I guess I would ask the question, like, if you're not teaching there, and then sort of getting some exposure for yourself in your work, what is it that you're hoping to get out of the investment in this conference? Now, I will say, like, when I go to a conference, I was teaching at the Pikes Peak Writers Conference, and I'm not one of those writers who, yes, I'm teaching there, but I still like to attend other sessions that other writers are putting on. And that's because I really do consider myself a lifelong learner. I think that there's always something to be taken away from what somebody else has to share from their experience. And also, I think I like to attend other people's sessions because I like to even just see how they're choosing to present materials on topics. And so, like, if I was going to choose to maybe, pitch a conference course idea in the future, what is it that I can learn about how they are approaching the material, and how can I integrate that and weave that into what I already know? So, I do think that there can be a lot of benefit for writers who are further along in their career. And we're going to get to a couple other topics around that in just a second. But even when it comes to learning, I do think it's always a good idea to at least attend some of the other classes. I think sometimes more experienced authors go to teach or they speak at these events, but they don't necessarily partake so much of in the learning of it. And that's, of course, it's their prerogative, but I do think that there's always something we can all take away, and we can grow and learn from our fellow writers. But that's my own personal opinion. One other sort of thing, if you are an author and you have books out in the world and you're hoping to sell books, and you're thinking, you're not teaching or speaking, and you're thinking, like I'll have some of my books in the bookstore there and be able to sell them. And sometimes they'll do like writers, like they'll have signings and things like that for the writers that are present. I guess I would say, in my personal experience, like, unless you're like a really big name author, I would say in general, the book sales at these events are fairly, negligible. They're not necessarily worth the investment of, if that's what you're going there hoping for, is like, to have this opportunity to sign books and sell books. It's mostly writers there who are open to learn craft. Now, if you're a nonfiction writer and you're teaching craft and you have some books on craft, then maybe your book sales are going to be better. I do not have that. I have fiction, and so I might sell a handful of books, but it's certainly not enough that's going to sort of offset the cost if I'm not being compensated for attending that conference because I'm teaching in some way. So just kind of a heads up about that. So another reason you might want to consider attending a conference, if you determine it's, you're kind of at a good place in your career, you're going to get something out of it, you can afford it, is that there are some really great opportunities that can come your way attending a writers conference. One particular opportunity that you might be interested in, especially if you're looking to try to publish traditionally, is the opportunity to pitch your work to agents, literary agents, and editors who attend these conferences. So that is definitely something that you're going to get that face-to-face time and that feedback, and hopefully a request from one of them to review either a partial of your manuscript, or if they're really excited, the whole thing. So that's always a really great opportunity. And I guess I would say, even if they are not interested enough to request your material, learning how to pitch your work or discuss your work in that really concise way is always a good skill to try to master, whether or not you're having to do it in person or you're selling somebody on your book in that back cover copy. So that's just really kind of a great opportunity to hone that skill for sure. And obviously, I just think it's always a huge opportunity to learn from authors who are there teaching, who are further along in either their skill sets as a writer, they're there teaching craft, or they're further along in their career than you. So maybe they have, published several books, either traditionally or self-published. They've sort of traverse the ropes, so to speak, and they have something that they would like to give back or information that they would like to share. And so I also think, like I had said earlier, I'm a lifelong learner, and I think any opportunity to learn from others that are further along than we are is a great opportunity. I guess I would say just make sure that those are the opportunities at the conferences that you're thinking about going to. And of course, oftentimes they'll list out who's going to be their speakers, who's their faculty, what agents and editors you could maybe expect to be present. And so, do your due diligence before. It can be quite a large investment of, like I said, $300 to $1,000. Are there going to be those learning and growth opportunities, or even potentially career opportunities when it comes to pitching, that are in alignment with the path that you would like to see for your own career? So just a little bit of advice about that. So another thing to consider that I think is really fantastic about going to a writers conference is the networking opportunity. So oftentimes writers can approach the other authors or the agents who are teaching a class, or they're on a panel, if they just kind of want to get some of that face-to-face time, if they want to ask a particular question. I, for example, had several times after I taught at this last conference where other less experienced authors came up and sort of asked me, like, hey, do you have a minute? Could you sit with me? I have some questions I want to ask you. Or they have very particular circumstances that they just want some advice on. And I am always happy to do that. I sort of, figure I am making myself available at that conference. So if I'm out and about and I'm around, I'm open to answering any questions or having those conversations. And so I do think it can be a really great networking opportunity. You never know who you might be chatting with at the bar. They call it BarCon. You never know who you might be having those conversations with, and what that might lead to, or just sort of what insights and information you can glean from those casual conversations. And I understand that a lot of writers are introverted in nature. I am as well. And so I think putting yourself out there can feel a little vulnerable if it's not something that you are accustomed to, or you haven't really sort of learned that skill set. And I guess I would say there again, it's another learning and growth opportunity, to get used to being able to start up those conversations with people that you don't know. And it's not as hard as you think it is, because, sometimes it's just as easy as, hey, my name is Rebecca Taylor. It's nice to meet you. Tell me about what you write, and so you just sort of give somebody else that opportunity to, tell you a little bit about themselves. It's a great icebreaker. I'm gonna tell you, it works every time. So when in doubt, ask somebody about why they're at the conference, what's their story, and it really sort of gets that conversation going pretty easily, I promise. Another great benefit to those casual conversations is that you just never can tell where they will lead, and what you might learn about other opportunities within that writing world, whether it's small presses that are open to submission, whether it's, that somebody knows that a particular agent is looking for a very particular genre and it just happens to be what you write. I, at the Pikes Peak Writers Conference, heard of or witnessed at least 3 or 4 opportunities that happened in the bar after all the classes, and it's just, an agent overhears a conversation that somebody is having about their work, or an editor, is having a conversation with an author, and it's not even somebody that they were pitching to, but they invite them to go ahead and send them their work. And so, I just think it's always, if you're going to invest the money to go to a conference where you're going to be sort of rubbing elbows with people in the industry, then get yourself out there and rub some elbows. I know it can feel uncomfortable, but I think with a little bit of practice and just sort of leading with questions, it's going to, it'll get easier with time for sure. And I think the last point I want to make is, we discussed how expensive these conferences can be. Make sure you're doing your research about any of them that you're deciding to attend. If you're going to invest money in your career in this way, make sure that there are going to be the professionals in the industry that are going to be aligned with the work that you're bringing to the table. So, for example, it's not going to do you much good if you write romance and you're going to a conference that doesn't have any editors or agents there that are even looking to acquire romance. They don't manage their publishers list that handles that genre, just as an example kind of thing. So, you know, like I said, go to those conference websites, check out who the faculty is going to be, and just make sure that, you know, you're in alignment, like your type of, what you're writing is in alignment with the industry professionals that are going to be present there. And the last point I would make is, you know, with regards to the faculty, and particularly when you're looking to attend maybe a more regional or a smaller conference, make sure that those industry people, the faculty that they have there, the authors, are in fact actually further along in their career than you are. You know, sometimes if it's a very small conference, it's a very, you know, sort of hyper regional, they maybe don't have a wide swath of authors who have a lot of experience. And I think sometimes, you know, you're maybe paying a lot of money to go to something, and you're being taught craft by somebody who maybe hasn't exactly walked that walk yet. And so that's all I'll kind of say about that. Just because, you know, somebody can teach a skill, and there are a lot of amazing teachers out there, I guess if I'm spending a lot of money to go learn something at a writers conference, I want to make sure that I'm, you know, learning from people who are either further along with their writer craft and ability than I am, their skill sets, or they're further along in their career than I would consider myself to be. And I'm there to sort of, I want to learn from their expertise. Now, if you're a brand new writer, of course, almost everybody that they have there is going to be further along. You know, just make sure that you have sort of gleaned what you can from free information that's available online, and that you've actually sort of applied yourself to getting some writing done, so that when you go, there's sort of there's a foundation there for you to apply your new learning to, and you'll probably have a better sense of whether or not this is even a career you want, or it could be a hobby, I suppose. Like if this is even a career or hobby that you want to continue to apply yourself to. Writing is rough. It can be it's a tough life. It's a tough industry to sort of, I think, persevere in long term. And so I think before you're investing, you know, $1,000 in something, make sure that it's something that you're really interested in for the long haul, because you are making an investment in yourself as a writer and in your writing career when you choose to attend these conferences. Having said that, I am a big fan of writers' conferences. I love to go. I love to teach at them. I really take very seriously the fact that people spend a large amount of money to attend these conferences, and so I'm always trying to make sure I'm bringing my best material and presenting it in a way that is going to be helpful and beneficial to the writers that are investing in themselves to be there. And of course, that's what I'm hoping to do with this channel as well. Provide content that you find useful and helpful. If there are any questions that you have for me or content ideas that you would like me to answer in a video here on YouTube, go ahead and put that in the comments. I'd love to take a look at, you know, what are some areas of learning that I could maybe answer some questions about here on YouTube. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. That helps with those algorithms. And I hope you'll consider subscribing. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Taylor, a best-selling author of domestic thrillers. Thank you for watching.